Hello and welcome to this video review of a new Kickstarter campaign which the rewards have just started coming through for. This is Andrew Dickinson's Dreamcast Year 1. Basically this was a book that was crowdfunded last year and is aiming to cover the first year of the Dreamcast's production. So basically from the UK launch date of 1999 is its main focus through to the year 2000, and covering basically all the games around that sort of time. Every single launch title is in this book here. There's a few retrospectives as well, and a few key players in the Dreamcast scene who've contributed towards making this book a reality. Now, it was a very, very successful Dreamcast Kickstarter. Anyone who follows the website, Dreamcast Today, they probably have seen that I'm not amazingly enamoured with Kickstarters because there's a lot of sort of fraud that goes on, and also projects that never really come into fruition. Sort of fraud-wise, you had Saber Riders, which never came out in the end and went a bit quiet. Also, Elysian Shadows has gone a bit quiet as well. There's not really much going on there. Update hasn't been since June last year. But anyway, we're not here to talk about ambitious projects and their lack of focus. We're here to talk about this one, and this is a product that has actually a tangible item in my hands here. Now, these being sent out as we speak now. It's February. They're being sent out mostly abroad first, so people can get their copies, and then people in the UK are getting theirs sort of at a later date, because naturally we're closest where Andrew actually is dispatching these from. So as you can see from the front cover, we've got this really lovely artwork on the front, which is very reminiscent of sort of like DC UK back in the day. Very funky sort of early 2000s artwork. On the back you've got basically just a little bit of sort of information of what's going on. Talking about how the Dreamcast is supposed to be the returns form for Sega, and how the Saturn was basically not their successful market, and how little really lifespan of Dreamcast was. At the bottom here you've got the dreamcastyears.co.uk, which is Andrew's website, which I certainly would prompt you to have a little look at. Also you've got Too Old for Gaming. These are the guys, I think I did like a PS Vita book before this, so this is sort of like almost like a secondary one here. But as you open it up, you sort of see straight away you've got these really sort of cool caricatures of the people that have contributed in the book to the various different articles and retrospectives, really. And this is such a real walk down memory lane, this book. It's so cool that you can just sort of go from the earlier days of where the Mega Drive was, and the positioning of the Saturn back in the 90s, and Sega's thought process behind the Dreamcast is almost like a pop culture product at the time. There's quite an interesting interview I found in this book by Bernie Stolar, who was famous for saying about how the Saturn was not the future of Sega, and was very much heralding the Dreamcast at the time. And there's some really, really cool information that he gives about some games that were supposed to come out for the machine and were in early talks that never happened in the end. I really prompt you to pick up this book based on the fact that there are so many different little nuggets of information that you perhaps wouldn't have known before. As you can see here, you've got basically like the information on the visual memory unit here. That's one of the Dreamcast development discs, which obviously will give you some key information on the little tidbits on the paragraphs there. Now, you're talking about in the early time, which really, really sort of tells you here, like, demand far outstripped supply, which led to most retailers selling out on day one. The Dreamcast wasn't really a successful product when it launched back in '98 in Japan, and it did alright for the first sort of bit, but as Bernie says, that Sega were running out of money. They couldn't afford to keep the product going, and the different directions of Sega of Japan, Sega of America just really didn't help with resources and stuff like that. But you've got your 3 launches there, which is a cool chapter, and as you sort of flick through, you basically, there you go, you've got your interview with Bernie Stolar there, what Andrew's done is asked him a fair few questions, which sort of a Q&A session, telling you sort of how the position of Sega was at the time. So many brilliant screenshots as well that just bring the memories absolutely flowing back. I mean, who doesn't remember Crazy Taxi when talking about the Dreamcast? Picture of Bernie up there as well. And you've got a few other, there's unreleased Half-Life there, which is the section that basically tells you about the games, what could have been with the console. Now, you've got Casper Field there from DC UK magazine. He's also featured quite a lengthy interview talking about sort of the magazine and pressings of the time, and how the Dreamcast was perceived in sort of the media, which is given a different perspective. You've got sort of industry as in from ground zero, and then you've got sort of the secondary like sort of publishing houses and how they perceived the Dreamcast as a product itself. Moving forward through the book, you've got Ed Lomas, who was the official Dreamcast magazine, a particular favourite of mine back sort of in 2000, 2001. I really, really enjoyed how clinically clean and official looking the Dreamcast official magazine was. That it did seem like it was a product that did come from Sega, and there wasn't really much in the way of rumour and speculation. It was basically, this is a fact, these are the games that are coming. It's not, a case of grin and hope that these games are going to end up coming out. They didn't really sort of go that way, unlike sort of just Dreamcast magazine did. So that's quite a lengthy interview for that one there, which is quite cool, covering all sort of the different magazines around at the time. You've got David Calso from the official Saturn magazine UK. Now, the official Sega Saturn magazine is one of these revered magazines that almost is as famous as the Saturn product itself. If you are a Sega Saturn fan and you've read official Saturn magazine, you'll know what an exhilarating read that particular magazine is, and how it clinged on through sort of 97, 98 when the Saturn was barely clinging on itself. And they started covering sort of the import games and things like that from the machine, and also a bit of early Dreamcast stuff, which is quite cool. I think also sort of you've got Tom Charnock from the Dreamcast Junkyard there, well known sort of a fan of the Dreamcast and runs the Dreamcast Junkyard, started it back in 2005. But what I find quite interesting is that you get an in-depth look at each and every one of the games that made the Dreamcast what it was in year one. For example, Sonic Adventure there, which is a launch game in Europe, and talks about Sega Rally 2 here, moving on to things like Power Stone from Capcom, Virtua Fighter 3TB and Toy Commander, which a lot of these games are absolutely forgotten gems on the machine. Crazy Taxi, which came out a little bit later, that was sort of in the launch window rather than the launch of the Dreamcast. Some would say we had too many games to play anyway. Tokyo Highway Challenge and House of the Dead 2. Soul Calibur as well, which you can't again mention the Dreamcast without mentioning Soul Calibur, one of its key titles. But so many hidden gems in here as well, and some stuff that perhaps we didn't get over here in Europe. You've got a section that covers Godzilla Generations, for example, and Armada, which Armada is a game that we're not familiar with in Europe because it never got released over here, which is a shame. Now, you had sort of your backers who could pay for a certain tier and get featured in the book as well of their sort of retrospective games. So you've got Incoming, Mortal Kombat Gold, Rumania 203, Tomb Raider The Last Revelation, Ready to Rumble Boxing and Soul Reaver. And I agree with all those games being fond favourites. They are absolutely brilliant games and really show how the Dreamcast was just an instantly playable machine, even today. This is my favourite part of the whole book, I think, is sort of giving you the European artwork for these games and also their release date not only in Europe but in North America and sort of Japan as well, which is really, really cool, and I love this sort of thing. Now there's another Dreamcast book which had come out with, I think Sega put the stops on back in the day, which was a comprehensive look at all the Dreamcast games that had ever come out. So it's nice to see this sort of covering your PAL games and moving on to your NTSC stuff and Japanese stuff for that first sort of 12 months. It's really quite cool. Sort of a shout out to all your Kickstarter backers in there, which is really quite cool. And there's so many of them, look. So many people still care about the Dreamcast today. It's absolutely flabbergasting, really, isn't it? You sort of thanks in the end as well. It's good to see that basically all these people have helped to make this book the way it is. And coming soon, Dreamcast Year 2, which sort of we're hoping to work with Andrew with at some point to make a reality. So this is what you can expect in the post coming to you if you've backed this, and what a fantastic read this is. I can't wait to knuckle down and actually read it fully after just sort of having a flick through and just getting absolutely lost in the pages of memories with this. This is an absolutely fantastic read from someone who's clearly a fan of the console, and has had the input from various other fans around the world, and it's just brilliant, absolutely fantastic. You can also buy this if you didn't. If you want a Kickstarter backer, you can get it. Basically, dreamcastyears.co.uk. I'm sure you could probably get a copy of it there, and it retails for just over £10, which is absolutely brilliant value in this day and age for something like this. So seek it out, and if you have backed it, look forward to your copy arriving very, very soon. Strongly recommended by us over at Dreamcast today. See you later.